Ah, yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer, and this is the Evolution of Movies show, and I am joined, as always, by Andy Rossi and James Shippey, stars of the award-winning Dead Body movie. Before we get to the movie we're talking about today, Andy, tell the world about your huge victory.
At Soho Film Festival, we got 2 wins, 3 nominations. We won the Audience Award and we won the Best Ensemble Award. So super surprising, but very gratifying. So yeah, awesome.
What's really cool about that is the Ensemble Award is for the actors, and everyone on this show has acted in that movie, so we're all award-winning actors.
Exactly.
Nice.
Even this guy.
You can now say I'm an award-winning actor.
I have won more awards per line than anyone else in this movie. Line for line, I'm the most award-winning person in this
That is
movie.
true. I delivered one line and they gave me an award for it.
But everyone watching should definitely check it out. Dead Body Movie. You can find it on social media at Dead Body Movie. James, how are you, by the way?
I'm good. You know, it's a morning. I'm
Just
here.
finished watching Get Out.
Yeah, I just finished watching. I literally did. I watched Get Out maybe about 5-6 hours ago. So it's the life of a papa.
Well, Papa James.
Well,
yeah.
Let's get to it. This is the Evolution of Movies show. We watch movies, we talk about them, and break them all down. We call it the Evolution movies, though, because we always pick a movie that came out 1 year after the last movie we watched. So that means we started with a movie in 1990, then went to 91, 92. Now we're all the way in 2017. And next week, we're going to talk about a movie from 2018. But for now, it's all about 2017, a time when theaters had hits like Logan, The Shape of Water, and of course, Snatched, starring Amy Schumer and Goldie Hawn.
Wow.
But we aren't talking about those. No, we're talking about Get Out, a movie IMDb describes as a young African-American visits his white girlfriend's parents for the weekend, where his simmering uneasiness about their reception of him eventually reaches a boiling point. Doesn't really tell the full story there, but it did receive a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, getting our high mark, taking Mad Max Fury Road off the top. It was at 97. Now 98 is the high mark. Safe House still the lowest at 53%. I saw this movie very recently, and I really enjoyed it, but I was worried going back into it. Like, can I watch this movie again, or is it going to be like a Sixth Sense? I don't know. I ended up really enjoying it, though. I thought it was still really good, even though I'd seen it about a year ago. James, had you seen this movie before, and what were your thoughts going into it?
Oh, yeah, I definitely saw this movie before. I saw it when it first came out at a theater in Van Nuys. And movies like this, there's 2 monumental movies. I saw The Departed at the Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem. And it was a very similar response from the audience, okay? The audience is, when you go to see movies like this, it's a very participatory film, depending on like what part of town you go watch it in. And that's kind of the beauty of theater. I saw it when it first came out. It exceeded my expectations. I remember hearing about it, and I'm like, I don't know. It's coming. It's coming out in January, February of the year. That's normally like kind of a dump, film dump.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, not as much anymore, but around that time, movies just kind of come out. They're being dumped by studios, but I mean, it holds up well. And watching it this time and kind of critiquing it, I enjoyed it, and I really caught up on some things. And it wasn't as Sixth Sense-y as I was thinking it was going to be. So I was actually just watching very subtle stuff. It's a damn good film, to be honest with you. Well written and acted, and obviously directed.
We had a few comments come in from friends of the show before, Andy, we get your take. George Hermosa says, you can quote me, Get Out is the best and most creative movie of the last 5 years. And we also had at ND Insanity on Twitter say, awesome movie and almost one of a kind, almost redefined horror movies. I feel that Jordan Peele has been trying to recreate that magic for 5 years and been unsuccessful. So a few interesting quotes from friends of the show. Guys, thank you so much for sending those in. Anyone listening, if you want your comments read, just hit us up on social media or wherever. Andy, you picked the movie. Tell us about why you picked it.
I mean, similar to James, I saw this in the theater, and I saw it very early on. It definitely liked the trailer. I'm like, this looks awesome. And usually, like every year, I try to remember what movie I thought was my favorite film of the year, and usually, like I forget what I even see by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But this one, I do remember like telling people to go see it. I'm like, this is my favorite movie of the year. And like James said, I do kind of remember it coming out early because I remember like throughout the year even being like, did this movie top it? Nope. Did Snatched with Goldie Hawn and Amy Schumer top it? Nope. So I thought it was such a slick, well written film, and just watching it again, kind of like you guys said, almost like with the Sixth Sense thing, kind of knowing already what was going to happen, but there's some really cool like subtle lines, especially with Bradley Whitford's character, that says some things that you're like, oh, okay, and it pays off later. So just I mean, I definitely agree with that. Was it 98 degrees 98%? Yeah,
It was 98 degrees. The
98
only thing
degrees.
higher than 98% is 98 degrees.
Nick Lachey is on the
He's
soundtrack.
He's on my
He's on
brain.
the soundtrack and your brain,
24/7.
obviously.
This movie would be very different if Nick Lachey was in this movie.
Was one of the Armitages.
Yes.
Armitages.
He might actually fit right in with that family, actually.
He could. He could.
So before we get into the movie, I want to thank everyone for watching or listening, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys so much. Hit us with a 5-star review, like, comment, share, subscribe, everything else. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's start talking about this movie. We start, a guy is walking through a hedge maze of a suburb, lost, with the sweet tunes of the 30s playing. He gets choked out, put in the trunk of a car. Meanwhile, a couple is getting ready to meet the girlfriend's parents, and he's worried about whether they will accept him as a black man. James, I always like to start with you. This is kind of the start of the movie, kind of showing us the world they live in. Obviously, some craziness is going on. Someone got kidnapped right off the streets, and there's some tension already brewing going to visit the family.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I remember, with Lakeith Stanfield, who's a great actor as well, from Atlanta fame, and obviously a whole bunch of other stuff. I remember like the crowd being very into these first 5 minutes. There's a lot of oohs and ahs and don't go to, all that kind of stuff as he's walking down the neighborhood. And as I was thinking of it now, like I say, you really set the premise. This is the opening paragraph of the thesis statement, or whatever you want to call it. Because Lakeith Stanfield is walking in a very nice upscale neighborhood, but he is full of fear. And normally in a neighborhood like that, you should normally feel safe. But they're making it very clear for a minority or for a black person's experience, they may not feel safe in a idyllic, safe area because of profiling and all that other stuff, and that's like the worst fear, that you get, kidnapped and choked out and thrown into a trunk of a car and, maybe never to be seen again. Right. And then obviously in the beginning, I love how they're playing the music during the credits, and then all of a sudden it changes to Childish Gambino, right? Redbone, I believe. And you're seeing all this beautiful art, these pictures being taken by our lead character, Daniel Kaluuya. And you're juxtaposing that, like his dark skin up against the white walls, but then he's also got like his girlfriend's getting these sweets for him, and it's this kind of cute relationship, it looks like, that's brewed between them. But once again, his fears show up, obviously, about being accepted in this neighborhood or this family. And I think they just really set the premise very well with the film about the fears that a minority may have when they're going into a new environment.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing to see, I think, because frankly, as like a white person, you don't think about it as often. And when you see it in the movie, though, it instantly makes sense. And you're like, oh, it's interesting. As you said, this isn't the neighborhood you initially think in the very beginning when the guy's kidnapped. This isn't the neighborhood you initially think. You're in the wrong part of town. But you immediately, the way it's filmed here, get that feeling of he's in the wrong part of town. Andy, this movie's set up, and one of the things I like about it, and I want you to talk about, is how kidnapping's obviously crazy and scary, but there's nothing that jumpy at the beginning. There's nothing that crazy, but they've already created this sense of tension with the beginning of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, they do such a great job this whole movie, tone-wise. So even the very beginning, it says Blumhouse Productions, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be scary and creepy. And the music that I don't know if Jordan Peele has chosen it or whoever chose that, some creepy. I think you said movie. It's music from the 30s or something. It was just this creepy. I don't know, like this perfect. Whoever selected that. And then, yeah, not only is he kidnapped, he's like rear naked choked. And yeah, you see Lakeith Stanfield, who's like one of my favorite actors, and like I'm like, oh, there he, and then you're like, oh, he's kidnapped, and then you kind of wonder like what's going to happen to him, and I would have never expected what does happen to him.
Yeah, the only reason I know it was the 30s, by the way, is I'm one of those old people that have to watch with the subtitles on, and it said in parentheses 30s music plays.
Oh,
So I go,
Oh,
okay,
nice.
it's 30s
Nice.
music. Okay, got it. That's how you can analyze the movie, guys. It gives you
I was
everything.
wondering. That was so specific. I knew it was in the whole song, but I was like, "Wow, Jack! Like you know your tunes, brother."
I know my 30s very well.
You know your
I'm
30s
like,
music
damn,
well.
I got to get better at my DJ skills. One thing I did want to mention before I've forgotten, I thought it was a good line. Allison Williams' character says, he'll tell you that he voted for Obama the third time, or
Yeah.
would have voted for Obama the third time. I just want to preface that. I'll get to that later.
Yes, that was good. So we get to, they're on their way to the house, and Chris's friend says he'll watch the dog when they hit a flying deer. After some stereotyping by a police officer, they get to the house. Everyone seems nice enough, if not awkward. They give Chris a tour of the house, and it's nice enough, but again, it's somewhat weird. But we learn why the servants are there and that Rose's mom is a hypnotist. They get to dinner, and the brother shows up, and he's a super weirdo talking about biting off tongues and UFC, and he wants to fight, but it doesn't happen. Talk about a foreshadowing moment there. That night, Rose is bummed her family is acting differently, but Chris just says, "I told you so." Andy, I want to start with you for this part because it is, again, that weird, like, as I was watching this, I was thinking, would I think this was weird if I didn't know this was the kind of movie it was? Or would I just think it was a little awkward and uncomfortable? Because obviously it's awkward and uncomfortable the way the family is doing their quote unquote best to embrace Chris. But it was interesting to me. What were your thoughts about how they introduced the family in the house?
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable.
Kind of embarrassing too.
Very embarrassing. Yeah. I just want to go back just for a second. Like the flying deer to me throughout this whole movie was the only thing I thought didn't fit, because I thought that had something to do with something, but I don't think it does. Right? It's just a deer they hit. Am I right?
Yeah. I think what that was really there for was to set up two things. I think one, to show that, again, for a lot of the viewers, that there is racism out there that people have to deal with a lot from the police officer, but also to give us that sense of the girlfriend is quote unquote looking out for Chris and make us trust her a lot more.
Yeah, that's a funny, actually, Andy, because I'm really into horror films. That trope is used a lot in horror films. Actually, when people are on their way somewhere, a desolate, street or highway, sometimes it happens in the middle of the night, they hit something. Hence, they have to stop the car, and then there's normally something lurking, in the woods. Like that happens all the time, but it also can be symbolic. In this, I see what you mean, because it's like, well, what does that? Because it's not really addressed much more. But his mother, I'm not giving too much away if you've seen this movie. When he talks about his mother later, his mother is involved in a hit and run. So even though the deer's not a human, it's still something that's hit by a car. So I think that kind of triggers some memories for him, as far as like him wanting to go back to the deer, because his mom was not given that kind of mercy or consideration when someone hit her, in that sense. And then with the police car scene, I'm giving you guys some inside baseball. I've heard Dave Chappelle talk about this in like one of his early stand-ups, but I've been in the car when like white people when we get stopped by police, and the way you see like white people handle police officers is like 180 degrees different than how we have to. So once again, you're talking about the fear, and I love Jordan Peele really kind of highlights that kind of the fear of like what minorities go through when they're dealing with different types of people, whether it's accepting family or with authority figures that you know that can you know, that have like the power dynamic is a very off kilter. So him like wanting to give his ID, like, oh yeah, sure, like that's a
Yeah.
natural thing. But like her being like, no, wait a second, officer. Which, like I said, most you know black people were like, man, I wish I could talk to a cop like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he even told her like, yo, that was sexy, like you sticking up for me. And we see obviously it was an ulterior motive later.
Right.
But
She
you know.
does such a great job in this movie. Like that part, and then like there's some other scenes where you're like, man, she's like a really like solid girlfriend. Like what a
Oh, it's
gal.
great. It's a
Right.
great bait and switch, really. It's actually kind of shocking
And
how good it is.
I love
Yes.
Yeah.
the parents and the whole family is so good in this movie. But when he's first like taking Chris for a tour around the house, he says a couple things that I just thought were so great. Just like he says something about don't go in the basement because there's black mold down there.
Mm.
And then he also says, he introduces him to the maid, and he says something about like, I always feel that part of our parents are in here. And he like points to the maid, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, interesting. And he does do the I would have voted for Obama the third time line, which
And I
makes
have
me think like they've rehearsed this.
Oh, of course. And like I said, it comes off as like, oh, this is a super liberal, like, you know, white family that like gets, we're really into the black people, basically. Like that's basically what he's saying. But there was one other line that I could really feel when he was talking about Jesse Owens and that whole
Yes.
thing about the, he's like, yeah, Jesse Owens went there and showed those Aryans and Hitler, and they tried to, just write in their face about it. He's like, and Chris, which is Daniel's character, he says, yeah, too bad for your dad, though, because basically Jesse Owens qualified for the Olympics ahead of Bradley Whitford's father. And the look on his face, he just kind of took a beat and he says, yeah, he almost got over it. And I was like, damn, that's such a damn good line. And even the way he delivers it, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It says everything right there.
You know what I caught this time around that I didn't catch in the past, and I don't want to jump ahead, but once we know how the movie unfolds, that scene with the running makes sense.
Oh, yes,
because he was a runner, and so that's why he wasn't just. We'll get to that part in a second, but
Can I talk about the brother really quick? He's so good. He's such a good actor. So
much tension, much tension when he arrives.
He's so good.
He reminded me of like they wanted Macaulay Culkin, but I don't mean to like put him down. Like he did a phenomenal job, but
yeah, he's really good.
When I first saw him, I was like, when you say you want Macaulay Culkin and your mom says we have Macaulay Culkin at home.
There's a lot of Culkins too. They could have had a shot.
They could have.
But he's so good. Him, just the way he talks, and he's talking about MMA, and just he's so weird and slimy. And I just thought that whole setup was great because you're introduced right away. You're like, this guy, something weird is going to happen out of this guy.
When he talks about Kaluuya's body, like once again, this is I forgot the word, but like I said, Peele is like doing a lot of very obvious stuff about race and stuff and very subtle stuff, but it's kind of in your face. He's like, with your body and your genetic makeup, which we'll see why the genetic makeup of of black people is very important to this family later on. But with your you imagine how awkward that would be. Imagine if you're at a dinner party with your wives or girlfriends and their family of different cultures, like kind of commenting on whatever about your culture. It's so weird. If you just really put your mind to it with your body and genetic makeup, you could, it's just like, So Kaluuya for us is such a proxy for the audience. You could see him. He's such a great actor. You're seeing him processing all this information. He's such a great, quiet actor that, he can say a lot without saying anything. And I just wanted to give him a shout out on that, which we all know.
The fact that the character Chris does act every bit the way you would want someone to act in a scary movie. Because James, to your point earlier on, we're always saying like, no, don't go upstairs. No, don't do this. Chris does exactly what a real person would do. I think where at first you're like, this is weird, and then as soon as it gets to the point of okay, I gotta get out of get out. He's like, no, right now, we're going. Where are the keys?
Yes.
Anyway, we don't want
Yes.
to jump ahead.
And he's
Sorry.
calling his friend for backup too, which I think is so smart. If I'm in a weird
Oh, yeah.
situation, I'm calling one of you guys and being like, all right, so the brother just said I got a great body. It's not
And shout out
Ricochet.
to Rod Williams, Lil Ray, Lil Ray Howery. He's every time he gets on the screen, he's so funny. He's just kind of saying what maybe in our subconscious, someone would say he's that friend.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's like talking about sex slaves and you gotta get your ass out of there.
Yeah,
he's the homie. Just
so
funny.
We gotta stop real quick. We're going too far ahead because I want to talk about him too. He was such a highlight to this movie. But Chris goes for a smoke, and the gardener runs at him at full speed, and it's absolutely terrifying. He speaks to Rose's mom, and she talks about how hypnotism works, and in doing so, she starts to hypnotize him as he tells a story of how his mom died. Now he can't move. He's crying, and she makes him sink as he falls into the darkness. Rose's mom says he's in the sunken place. And he wakes up. Chris goes to take photos and talks to the gardener, who is just a terrifying delight overall. At the party, it doesn't get better as poor Chris is sized up and standing out until he sees another guest at the party, Logan King, who doesn't offer any more comfort. Finally, he meets a blind art dealer before heading upstairs, and the party stops completely when he finds that his phone hasn't been charging. So, James, this is such a fascinating kind of set of things where we kind of see how weird it can get. But by the end of this little set of scenes, we know something is wrong. It's not just a perception. It's more than that.
Yeah, no, it's very obvious. And, let's just say, I mean, we already know this whole sunken place thing. This has become part of like pop culture. The sunken place. It's used in a lot of emphasis. If maybe if they're leaning too politically, or they just don't get it, or they're not part of the culture, we always will say like, oh, well, that person, they're in a sunken place right now. We gotta rescue them. But yeah, like I say, the tension of the sunken place, and when he wakes up and during that party, once again, people I don't know what the word, they're like objectifying him. There you go. Objectifying him, maybe like how a woman feels when they go out and they're dressed a certain way, and dudes are just kind of salivating at them. He's basically getting that treatment at this party that Rose didn't know was an annual thing. And when he meets Lakeith Stanfield, like I said, it's us as the audience. We're like, oh, well, no, he's not talking normal. He's with this woman, and it keeps getting repeated when he tells Lil Ray Howery later on, like, yo, I think I saw Dre. He's with a woman. He's with a white lady 30 years older than him. And he's not there's something he doesn't know, because us, the audience, we know we're watching a horror movie. He doesn't know he's in one. He's like, there's something off about him. And the offness about him, and I'm kind of going back, is the same offness that you see with the groundskeeper and also the maid. Right? There's something off about them. They don't really see. There's something behind their eyes that doesn't seem quite right. And even the way they speak, they seem like they're trapped, or they're being very I can't think of the word, but
like
they're
almost
they're censored. There's just something not right. But he's trying to put two and two together. We know, but he's trying. And with the blind art dealer, played by Fuchs from Barry, is so great, and it's kind of like this nice rapport. He has this moment when he's meeting a guy that's iconic to him, but the guy makes it clear, hey, I know who you are too. I don't know, that's going to come back later. And the whole thing about Stephen Root's character is he's blind, and it's and obviously if someone's blind, what would they want? They'd want to be able to see. He says at one point, I wish I had your eye, as a photographer, which is kind of
what's great though, if I can jump in, what's great about that though is, as a viewer, the first time you hear he's blind and you think, oh, that means he's on your side, because he wouldn't care. He can't even see. So it doesn't matter. So the first time you're watching it, at least me, I didn't immediately think, oh, he's super evil. I was thinking, oh, he might be the one that's on your side because
He
he
might be an
doesn't.
ally, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think I've thought that too. You're right, because he's the only one who's talking to him like another human being and not objectifying him.
Yeah, this
True.
this movie does such a great job too of just like you were just mentioning some of the things he says, like just these little breadcrumbs that are very particular. Like watching the movie, like we I think we talked before the show about Sixth Sense. That movie was brilliant too, where it was just like you got subtle hints along the way, and then spoiler alert, Bruce Willis is a ghost.
What?
So
Wait,
yeah.
wait,
Oh
what?
shoot! Oh no! So,
Thanks,
but-
Andy.
but this movie I think does a similar thing. Like watching it back this time around, I was kind of like I was seeing all those very subtle hints of what things we were maybe going to see later, and it's just such a very well written script. And I got to talk about one other thing is when Catherine Keener, the mom character, is doing I wrote it down, the heightened suggestibility. That just sounds creepy in itself, but just this stirring that cup, you're just like, what is happening? And then all of a sudden, like, and James talked about Daniel Kaluuya's acting skills. I mean, that you got to sit in a chair and just like deal with some stuff, and he does. It's just like very amazing work he does there. But then how she just says, "Now sink," and then then you're just like, "Uh-oh, this is our lead man. He's gone." I think this might be the best part of the movie, just because usually the middle of a movie, like there's some okay stuff going on, but you're usually like, oh, the beginning was great, the ending was awesome. Like this was so important. Like all the weird characters are fighting. Lakeith Stanfield's character, what it says his name was Logan King, like he does such a great job too. Like just like being in this weird world. The guests all reminded me of like vampires or something. They're very strange and acting odd. I'm like, are these humans?
Well, what's incredible is now, like when you watch it back too, you really appreciate this. It's funny because going into this movie, and maybe this is something I should end the show with, but I'm going to say it here. Is going into this movie, I was like, can I watch this second time? Is it going to be like Sixth Sense where everything's ruined? I think this movie is better the second time through because you start to see, because now knowing what you know about like the groundskeeper, right? Knowing who he's not weird. He's just not. I am projecting what I think that guy should act like, but he's acting like a different person, and it feels weird. And I think that's playing with us, the viewer, in such a way. Because he's really just acting, spoiler, not to jump ahead, he's acting like an old man, an old white dude is what he's doing. And that's why, and but I, as a viewer, I'm projecting on what I think the groundskeeper should act like. So when he acts like an old white guy, like if he was an old white guy playing that role, I'd be like, oh, he's acting normal. That's what you'd expect. So it's actually messing with me as the viewer watching this play out. He's not weird. He's just playing a character I am not ready for him to be playing or expecting him to be played based on how he looks. And I think that really attacks us, the viewer, like in a good way, like kind of breaks that fourth wall and gets to us, the viewer. I think that's what's so incredible about some of these scenes.
The maid too, when she does the no. Oh my
God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the lead in line to that is like, look, I just get a certain way when I'm around a whole bunch of white people. You know what I'm talking? Like he's trying to relate to all the different black people in the film. He's trying to like talk to them. Like you see how him and his friend, the TSA agent, talk to each other. For any minority communities, like when they're together, they can kind of relate on a different level. So they're kind of doing that. So he's trying to do that, but he's not getting it. And yeah, that's from the trailer. That creepy of the no. And it's like, oh my God, like the hair in the back of your neck,
right,
kind of stands up because you don't know what's going on behind her eye because that woman's also fighting something. Because technically, what happens with these, I'm not giving some away, but there's something going on when these people, there's an occupation going on within them. Two things are at war with each other, and that's why these people might flip in one instance and feel another way in another. It's kind of brilliant and kind of subversive writing, because a lot of times with this kind of stuff, when it comes to race thing, a lot of times it'll be more in your face with it. But I think that's what makes Get Out such a, and this is probably something I would say at the end, this is what makes it such a remarkable film. It's not completely in your face and just straight up with it. It's like more nuance to issues when it comes to different cultures and race.
Well,
Yeah.
we do talk about the conflict. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I cover a certain part real quick. And it's
Yeah.
so Chris calls his friend, who is both equal parts hilarious and speaking as the audience, saying things are dangerous there and he should leave.
Sex
Georgina shows
slaves.
up and starts to
Sex
break.
slave.
As we had mentioned, he heads outside and is asked about the African American experience and
Uh,
deflects the question to Logan, who suddenly yells, "Get out!" Hey, the title of the movie. Before everyone calms him down. And now Chris is starting to realize something is going on. And he's right. People are bidding on him. Oh,
mm,
this is uncomfortable to talk about. But the blind art dealer wins the bidding. So yeah, this is where we find out that the whole party was really just set up to parade Chris around, and all the things that everyone was saying starts to make way more sense, and all the weirdness starts to stand out. We kind of talked a little bit about this, so we won't hang on this part too long, but I wanted to get your, I guess, thoughts on the fact that now we know for sure they are bidding on Chris. James, we'll let you start.
yeah, I mean, like I said, Jordan Peele's subversive. Basically, it's a slave auction. I mean, if you want to get like specific, and that's what makes it so disturbing, is this kind of stuff really did happen back in the day. Obviously, it's basically a slave auction, but he does it in a horror slash science fiction-y type of twist, which makes it, like I said, more digestible and more like critique worthy in the lexicon of films. Hence, we're talking about this film. Uh, was it 4 years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talking about how effective it is. That's not always the case when films come out. That's what makes it such a powerful narrative. But the other thing during the bidding, which I think is kind of really a great scene, is when Chris is with Rose. I guess they're like near a lake,
Yeah.
and he's pouring his heart out to her about his mother and about his discomfort here. And it's such a tender scene. It kind of gives me chills because it's like, yo, he's talking to his ally. Because during this time, she's like, well, she's during the whole time to this point, she's kind of like shocked by everything and also kind of shocked that he's feels a certain way. But it looks like they get on the same page. And it's so tender because they're talking about how they love each other and how she's there to support him. And she understands his pain from his past and his discomfort. And she's like, you know what, let's get out of here. You know, I'm like, yes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even I'm sure the audience like, okay, good. You know, some horror movies, we don't mind ending 30 minutes early because we don't want you in harm's way. You know, if the movie's the end there, like, okay, we're getting out of here. We're getting out of Dodge. And it's also a preamble to like when shit really hits the fan, when everyone's leaving after the auction, which we'll get to, obviously. But I just thought it was a lovely, tender moment and heartbreaking when you look back on it.
Yeah, especially now that you know exactly what that relationship really is.
Yeah.
It's equally heartbreaking. There was a moment as he's coming back to the house that the brother was playing like a ukulele as he was walking back in. And I don't know about you guys, but and maybe this is me digging too much for meaning or symbolism, but it felt like it was a little bit like Deliverance and the boy playing the guitar. It felt like it was a little callback as they're walking in, and he's playing. He didn't play the actual tune. It was that, you know, you could almost feel that same like ominous, like this isn't good.
I don't know. The writing on this is so good. Like even the dad just saying, "We ready for sparklers and bingo?" Like it's just like, and you know it's not going to be sparklers and bingo. So then you see what it is, and you're like, "Oh my god!" And yeah, I just thought it was a great way to show Lakeith Stanfield, like, because you knew that something was up, and then for him to just take the picture and that just like snapped him out of it for a bit was like, it was nice that it was just such a cool part of the movie, because then you're like, okay, it's possible to reach these people somehow we might be able to reach them. So I thought that was interesting because you're like, okay, there's some hope there.
So
Yeah.
we move on, and Chris finds out that Logan was actually some dude he used to know. He says they need to leave now, but before he leaves, he looks in the little door and finds a ton of pictures of exes from Rose's past, and they all have something in common, including two of them work for Rose's parents. Chris is looking to get out, and now he's losing it, and now everyone puts their cards on the table. And with the tap of a cup, Chris is out, and they are taking him downstairs. and he beholds the coagula. Meanwhile,
Oh my God.
after being unable to reach Chris's friend does some investigative work and finds out Hayworth went missing and tells the police. I love this directing and the way this story unfolded, because it was such a, oh my God, this is getting so tense and scary, released with comedy. Oh, it is scary again. Like it was a very clever, let your guard down. Oh no, it's still dangerous. Let your guard down. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, Andy. You did a comedic movie with some tense moments in it. So I wanted you to speak on that.
Thank goodness they do, because there's so many horror films. We're talking about like horror film tropes. You go to the cops, you tell them somebody's possessing and they go, oh, absolutely, we need to go talk to randomly. They know an exorcist, and they, goes down this whole. Where in real life, if I were to go in a police office and be like, all right, my friend is possessed and he's been lobotomized, they'd be like, okay, we're gonna take you to the nut house. So I think they handled that really well, and it definitely turns for me too, because the cop, she seems like kind of like listening. She's like, okay, let me get some other people in here. I'm like, okay, cool. She's going to help him. And then they all just break into laughter. I'm like, this poor guy. But I knew he was going to, he was persistent. He kept saying what? He's like, TSA.
TSA. I love how he's like, look, well, I work at TSA, and technically, like, I'm just as trained as you guys. I'm dealing with terrorists and shit.
Maybe a little more so, but we won't
a little more so. Yeah, but we ain't gonna talk about that right now. And he went with this white girl for the weekend, and you could just see the look on her. Like, I don't know, it's just very subtle stuff. And I don't know, it's just funny.
Just the balance of, we're at the peak of terror in the movie, and Rod is out here just crushing.
And you're hoping Rod, because he's a silly ass character.
Yeah.
But you're hoping, once again, in movies like this, when someone's gone missing and you go away, you don't know what's happening to that people, you're hoping he's gonna be enough investigative to literally just eventually either get the cops to go there or go himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what you're hoping, that he's piecing stuff together. And it's kind of that moment when he goes to feed the dog, and he looks at the dog, and the dog looks like it's missing its owner, and he's like, yeah, I know. Like, he's talking to the dog, like, I know, I'm scared too, or I'm worried too. And I just wanted to say one other thing, that tension-filled scene. The only problem, I'm gonna say problem, I did think it was a little convenient that the little door to the bedroom was open, and she just happened to have like pictures laying around. You forgive it because the movie's so well done. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was a little bit, I don't know if it's a MacGuffin. I don't know if that's the right. I thought it was a little convenient that she just happened to have some Polaroids just sitting, waiting for the taking. But when he gets that whole thing with the keys, guys, I mean, it goes on for about maybe 5 or 7 minutes when he keeps asking about the keys. And at one point she gets in the ground. She's like, oh, well, I normally can find them. And, we all have, our significant others. We know it don't take that long to find car keys, even if you're trying to find it. And just the tension of her, like, oh, like, I know they're here somewhere, and I'll get them. And when he's downstairs and he just rolls the keys, he goes from being angry to pleading to tearful. Please give me the keys so we can get out of here. It's man, I don't know. I just had to keep saying again, such a phenomenal performance from Daniel Kaluuya.
And her turn though, when she's like, I'm looking, and then she goes, I can't give you the keys, babe. And it's like all of a sudden it's like different person, and you're just
dangling them.
Whoa.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. And like I said, he handles the situation, the way it's written and directed and the way it's acted feels so realistic, because you would at that point, like, no, I just need to get out of here. And you would start losing, like, give me the keys. I love that he is escalate. Like, it plays out so perfectly. And then when she does the thing that sends him to the sunken place, you're just like, oh my God, you're powerless. This sucks. Mm-hmm. You can't do all the things that, because if she didn't have that power, he probably would have just forced himself out of there somehow and gotten out of there. End of story. But she's got the teacup.
And what does she say? She says, like, you were one of my favorites, something like that. And it's just
yeah.
Oh, so you've been doing, and that's when I was like, okay, this has been a whole routine. You've seen the pictures. That's why I mentioned the thing about the Obama thing. She mentions that story to each person. He says it each time. Like, I feel like it's a whole thing. Like, they've done this dozens of times.
Well, I'm
people
going to
let their
answer the
guard
thing
down.
about the door and the pictures, I think, in a second, because Rod calls Chris and Rose answers, and the TSA starts tingling, but she outsmarts him. Chris wakes up, and the art dealer explains the process of putting his brain in Chris's body and putting Chris in the sunken place. The
Mm,
dealer says he doesn't know why they target black people and actually doesn't care about the color of Chris's skin. He
mm,
just wants his eyes. So,
mhm,
this is where he says the people, they find it works better if you understand the process. I think they
mhm,
left it open on purpose
mhm,
so
mhm,
that he could start understanding what's happening. Is
Yeah.
my
mm.
maybe I'm piecing
No,
things together for them, but that's my response.
that makes perfect sense because, like I said, you don't a script's not that well written, and then because at that point that could be considered lazy writing. I know it's too. I mean, it's an Oscar-winning script, so it's not. Everything happens for a reason, so that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
But and it's good to even explain it later. So even if someone, I'm sure most people might be like, "Oh, well, that's convenient," but then you see why. It's at least explained later. So the writer is in on this for the audience. Like, okay, I'm gonna let you know why I did that. I made that
Because
choice.
that was my actual first thought with the door was
Yeah.
like, I think I would do that the first night. You poke around in the room you're staying in. You look, I mean, come on.
You know what I thought was funny? When that video first comes on and the grandpa starts talking, I was kind of thinking, I'm like, did he start all this just because of Jesse Owens? He was just pissed and he's like, you know what? That's it.
Possible.
Jesse Owens is at fault for all this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we can
Uh,
blame Jesse Owens' triumphant moment in human history for these folks getting
uh,
lobotomized and
what
Okay,
sunken.
but can
what
we
I
talk about? Oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say what I thought was interesting here is he says the art dealer as he's explaining this says he doesn't actually know why black people are being targeted, and throughout the movie, we're given some hints on why it could be, whether it be physically or because it's cool or whatever the case may
Mhm.
be. But I kind of like that they don't give a specific answer and let the mind of the viewer sort of fill in the blanks. I thought that was a
Mhm.
cool thing to do. James, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, obviously, yeah, you want to allow the viewers to talk. And like I said, this is a well critiqued movie. This is a movie that people discuss with each other after seeing it. But yeah, I mean, we know why, but we don't need him to say it for us. You know, he's
Hmm.
showing it, and we can discuss why because there's all kind of different reasons why. It's both obvious and subtle. You know, and you know, like I say, it could even go back to the sins of slavery or this and that. Like easily that could have been maybe other people from another continent or country, but it was the Africans and why, like all these different things, and separating people. And one thing you did say, Andy, and I just thought of this now, I could be wrong, but like this whole thing about the picture, like snapping people. And I don't know, this might be a step too far, but when we take a picture, we see a reflection of ourselves, like I guess our true selves, or the way we look to the world. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm thinking like if I'm writing, like why would that kind of snap people out? A snap of a picture, I don't know.
That's an
No, very
interesting game
interesting.
because
Yeah.
the whole point of pictures actually play a really huge part in this movie because he is a
Mm,
photographer. He's
mm,
taking the pictures. The guy wants his eyes. So there might be something to that. I also thought it was interesting that this whole movie is built around race, and at the end, Chris wasn't like for all the buildup to it being about race. At the end, he wasn't picked because of race. It was I thought that was an interesting sort of pull the rug out moment. Like, hey, I just want your eyes.
Oh
I thought
yeah, the
that was an
actual guy was. I just want your
yeah,
eyes. If you were, yeah, it just so
uh,
happens,
right.
the race
All
is an
that's still
issue.
there,
Yeah,
but
that's
that
not what
was
he wanted
uh,
specifically.
yeah. I thought that was a very
It was
interesting
interesting.
twist.
Yeah,
Mm,
and like with that art dealer, you thought he was kind of his ally too. So even when I first saw him pop on the screen, you're kind of like, oh, this guy might help. But then just the way he looks, you're like, I don't think he's my ally anymore. And I think it's very interesting at that time to be like, okay, so that guy that we thought maybe was going to help, nope. And then Allison Williams during that phone call with Lil Rel is
Oh,
so good. She's so great on the phone. And then like Lil Rel's kind of got like the upper hand. He's like, "No, I got you, I got you." When he puts
I
her
know.
on mute,
Oh,
and
I
then
love it.
and then
This
she
bitch
turns
is
it around,
lying.
and then she turns it around on him and says, "Oh, you know you wanted me all this time." And then he goes, "She's a genius."
I thought it was great too how she acted that with just a stone cold, like dead face.
Oh,
Vocally was acting. So on the other end of the phone, it would sound like she was into it, but just totally no
So
emotion on
good.
her face. Was because that's harder to do than I think people realize, is to
Yeah.
speak with emotion but have no emotion on your face. I thought that was
mhm.
incredible. We get to the end of the movie here. The surgery starts, but Chris plugged his ears and he kills the little brother and then rams a deer head into the doctor. Then he stabs the mom, but no, the brother's actually still alive. This time, Chris makes sure the job is done and he starts to leave in the car, but runs over Georgina. He stops to save her after a flashback to his mom, but Georgina, grandma, attacks him and the car crashes, killing Georgina. Then Grandpa chases him, and with a camera flash, the groundskeeper takes the gun and kills Rose, then himself. Just before Chris can choke out Rose, the police show up, but it's Rod. I mean, I told you not to go in that house. The two drive off because TSA has the situation handled. Andy, we'll start with you. Did you or did you not jump up and cheer when he pulled the cotton out of his ears? Because I was like, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, just like we've been talking about, this script is just so great. Just like every little thing matters. So him just scratching at the chair, you're like, oh, that's kind of a crappy chair. That's weird how that stuff is coming out. And then he thinks, oh, I'm going to put this in my ears. Everything, even the deer head on the wall later becomes a weapon. I think he gets hit with like a croquet ball, which I think is such like a white person sport. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
My favorite thing that I want to talk about though is Allison Williams. She's listening to, I believe, Dirty Dancing soundtrack, and she's eating a bowl of Fruit Loops with no milk in it, but a side of milk. And she's got like this really creepy turtleneck. I don't know. I'm a person that loves like character, like details. And I just thought that was so great. It's just like, what can make her look insane?
And she had all the pictures of the exes behind her too, I believe.
Weird.
Oh God, did she? I didn't even catch
So
that.
weird.
Yeah.
I was concentrating on
I
the
think
Fruit
it's, I think
Loops.
it's I've had the time of my life was playing.
Yeah.
At first, it's so funny because I saw her eating the Fruit Loops and I was like, oh, it must be healthier that way. Then I was like, no, you're still eating the same stuff. Just eat it like cereal. Why are you eating it weird? But this is really where it clicked to me that the you could, I guess this last scene with the fight happening with Georgina in particular is where it really clicked for me. That's why they're not acting weird. They're just acting like grandma and grandpa because of the way she acts in the car. You ruined my house, blah, 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 and geez, that groundskeeper's terrifying. Every time he runs, I'm just like, Jesus.
That actor does such a great job too in that scene, because just the way he talks is like, I forget what he talks about his granddaughter. He's like, whatever, I forget the words, but it's very, his whole thing is very strange. And then once he does kind of click back into his former self, his face looks different. I just thought he did such a great job of that. Like, he just looks very odd. And then all of a sudden, I almost thought it was a different person for a second. I'm like, wait, did he turn into somebody else? But no, it's just, now he's himself. So he like looks like normal.
There's something very scary and terrifying about this idea that, because in horror movies, as dark as it sounds, there's always this, well, once you're dead and it's over and you don't have to worry about it. Where with this movie, it really clicks that no, it's not over. You're going to be a passenger for a very long time. It's just beginning. And that's why when the groundskeeper kills himself, it feels like it makes sense. Like, he's been stuck in that body for who knows how long as a passenger, and he has the one chance to get out and he takes it.
Yeah, his one agency. And I mean, we're getting very deep into like lore of slavery and of the bodies, because sometimes people, and I hate to say it, but sometimes people sacrifice themselves. There are people jumping off of the slave ships on the way here. They're like, I know what's coming, so I'd rather, I'd rather die than be put into bondage. Another thing too, and I'm sure you guys caught this, but I remember reading about this. I was like, oh, it's like the meaning behind him using cotton to save himself, which in the past cotton was used as a tool, or it's a commodity that really endorsed slavery. There's so much money made from cotton, right? And and the cheap labor or the free labor. So I just thought that that's another like very strong image thing that he's using.
Mm-hmm.
That Chris used cotton to save himself from being lobotomized, and uh and and I remember at the theater when Chris is choking her, and once again the image, because like I
She
said, everything's about
smiles.
this. Yeah, she's smiling, and it's the black and the white, and the image of like a black man like doing that to a woman, a white woman. That's not an easy image to see for society, so to speak. And when the police pull up, I remember everyone audibly gasping, like, "Oh no, he's gonna die." Like he's
Mhm.
going to get killed by the people that are supposed to save him because he's in a position where you should not be in, even though he has every right to be at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? He
Yeah.
should be choking the life out of her. She just tried to kill him and have him taken away from himself. But I remember everyone just clapping a sigh of relief when they see Lil Rel get out there because
Yeah.
he's just,
Yeah.
and then he's got his jokes, and it was like such tension release because you thought that was going to be the end of him
Yeah.
at that moment.
Did you guys see the alternate ending, by the way? The original ending, actually.
I didn't see it, but I've heard about it. I didn't have enough time
So-
to look it up, but I know it's more bleak, right?
Yes.
Like for our lead. I mean, I don't know if you
So-
want to explain it to people. That's totally fine.
Yeah, so just to explain it real quick, the reason I want to bring it up is because you always hear about they changed the ending to make audiences more happy, and you always think, well, who cares? Make it the best story. This one, I feel like I understood. So the way the alternate ending, the original ending was, it was the police that show up, and even though I believe the girl dies, he ends up going to jail.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Which is, when you think about it, is a very like it tells a ton of messages about innocent people going to jail. I would be so devastated if that was the end of the movie, as opposed to the feel good end of Rod coming out. And for me, it was the first time I was almost like, thank you for sparing me the dark move, like the sad, bleak ending, I guess, decision
Thank
to make
goodness.
as a
Yeah.
viewer, or as a
Because that
director.
movie is so intense, and they do sprinkle you in with some laughter, thank goodness, and end on a laugh and kind of like a yay, is nice because you leave the movie theater and you say, wow, that was crazy, but good thing there was like something nice in the end. Where if they had that other ending, Jesus. Can I mention one thing I wrote in my notes was, did you notice when Bradley Whitford, the dad, is cutting his brain, he's just taking the top of the brain and just tossing it in the garbage.
Oh my god.
But I was just kind of thinking, I'm like, that's probably useful. His brain, right? I don't know.
Do you keep spare brain parts?
I'm just saying, if you got a basement full of weird stuff, you might need a brain. I don't know. I just thought it was odd. I was just like tossing stuff in the garbage.
Honey, do we have any extra brain in the garage?
And in the other film, right? If this was an Eli Roth film, he would have taken a bite out of it or something, right?
Yeah.
Like he would have just chewed
I just
on
thought
it
he
a
was
bit.
disposing of things very like nonchalantly. Some brain, toss it in the garbage.
So
That was my only problem with the movie.
Yeah, you're the only problem with the film, right?
Right.
Keep
Nothing
that
else
brain.
stood out to you, but that part was the part that upset you the most.
That took me out of it.
compared to, and you guys are gonna laugh when I say this, but compared to Sausage Party, right?
Very similar.
Which was the movie
No sentence like that has ever been uttered in human history. But go ahead, forge ahead, Jack. You have broke new ground here.
I wanted to say that, and for those who are listening to this on its own in a vacuum, our last movie we watched was Sausage Party, but I want to talk about how I like movies with messages are so powerful, but I like it when they can make the message part of the movie instead of, for me, it felt like Sausage Party was kind of like shoehorning in a message and sort of forcing it in and kind of beating you over the head with the message. Where what I like about this movie is it has a very clear, obvious message, but it doesn't impact, like the story is still the story. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's still telling the story, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to beat you over the head with the message, even though it kind of is beating you over the head with the message.
Yeah, because I have a good friend and we talk about these kind of films or TV shows. And Jordan Peele, he's very deft at doing this. If you're dealing with uncomfortable subjects for an audience, let's say an opposite audience, or an audience that that it might make uncomfortable, or people in general, you have to find ways to include themes and story structure and all that kind of stuff, so it doesn't make people Spike Lee's known for doing this. He's a great filmmaker, but he's pretty heavy-handed with his stuff. So sometimes I can take people out of the film, so they're not really getting a message. It's almost like hitting it over the head, and maybe it's hitting them a little too hard. Jordan Peele is using this whole thing about, first of all, the bottom line, like that kind of shit doesn't really happen, right? Mm-hmm. So it's still a little bit of fantasy when you're doing that. So you can make this message within a fantasy premise almost, right? Just like when you watch a science fiction movie, like when there's space and all this kind of stuff, they can do all kinds of themes and subject matters and really kind of hit you in a subtle way, even though you got like spaceships flying everywhere and you got like aliens talking to each other. So that's just a great way to storytell sometimes, if you're trying to like really get in the subconscious of a viewer about a message you're trying to deliver. And Andy, you can say this, I'm going full circle. When you have a smaller budget for a film, you really need to rely more on the writing and the acting a little more than like the big explosions and all these things that are just there for spectacle purposes.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I can't get over the writing. This did win the best original
screenplay. It did.
Yeah, and it's like, what an amazing script. We keep talking about everyone's performances in this, and honestly, every single character in this is well acted and very well done. But I wonder too, you got an amazing script like this, it's pretty hard not to be a good actor in this. Like, he did a good job.
Yeah,
he did okay.
Yeah,
nice work.
Like I said at the start, when I started, I thought this would be like Sixth Sense, where I felt like I already know it's not going to be as good the second time. I would say to people who maybe watched it a long time ago, found this and listened to it, go watch it again. I think it's actually better the second time through. Yeah. And it also is fun to go back and watch Key and Peele, and whenever they have one of those weird, creepy skits, go, yeah, I know which one of them wrote that one.
Of course,
there's some creepy stuff. They do some creepy skits, and now I'm always like, I know which one came up with that.
That's Peele all day. That's Jordan Peele all day.
Let's start wrapping this up. Andy, Kevin Bacon, how are you going to do this one?
This one was all over the place. Recently, a shout out to my dad, recommended this movie called Finch with Tom Hanks that's out right now. I haven't watched it yet, but the robot voice in it is Caleb Landry Jones, who plays the weirdo brother in this movie. So that movie's with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is in Apollo 13 with Kevin Bacon.
Attaboy. Nice.
Feels like you stretched a little using the voice of a movie that just came out.
He's in, actually, so that's the one I came up with, but he's actually in Caleb Landry Jones is in X-Men First Class. Plays a character called Banshee, which is with Kevin Bacon. So that's right in there, but I'll be honest, that one wasn't on my own. I IMDb'd him and I'm like, X-Men First Class, Kevin Bacon's in that.
Yeah.
So it works that way too, Jack.
Well, that does it for 2017. Next week, we go to 2018. James, what movie are we watching?
Well, we're watching another movie with heavy, strong themes. It's going to make you keep thinking when you go home after you watch it, especially when it comes to gaming. Game night with my man, why do I keep forgetting his name? Ozarks. Jason Bateman.
I always call him, in my brain, Ozark Bluth is what I...
Yeah, Ozark Bluth.
Changing up the tone. 2019... I get to pick, and that is Uncut Gems. I still haven't seen it, so that'll be fun to check it out for the first time. And Andy, you're picking 2020, a year we all remember fondly watching movies.
I'm excited about this one because this one involves a guy we all know, Andre Welsh, directed Disrupted. He was the DP on Dead Body, and so I feel we got to watch Andre's movie, Disrupted.
Very cool. And where is that? Is that going to be on? Like, do we know where that is?
Yeah, it's on. I know it's on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
So
okay,
cool. I'm hoping we could get Andre. If you're listening to this, we want to bring you on as well.
So that'd be nice.
Give Andre some time. Yeah,
that'd be fun to have an actual person who's part of the movie to talk about it.
That would be good.
Imagine that.
So that does it for us this week. That has been Get Out. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the movie or if we missed anything. Also, make sure to check out Game Night. Next week, we're going to talk all about that. Then Uncut Gems, and then Disrupted. for 2020. James, you're going to pick 2021, the last one. Are we this close to the end of the year already? Jeez,
We are.
so you're going to pick 2021, the last movie of the year. That should be fun.
No pressure.
We won't know what that is until next week, though. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Andy, where can we find you online?
You can find me at Dead Body Movie or at Just Andy Rossi.
And James Shippey.
You'll see pictures of me on at Dead Body Movie and at JShippy2 Twitter, at JeShippy2 IG.
And you will see me taking as much credit as possible for Dead Body Movie at Dead Body Movie. You can also check me out at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. That does it for us. We'll see you guys next time.